Welcome to Flipping the Table. Today, Michael speaks with Carrie Balkcom, a chef, rancher, and the executive director of the American Grassfed Association. The AGA is the nation's independent certifier confirming that cattle, bison, sheep, and goats eat only grasses in pastures for their entire lives. This ensures the animals live the stress-free life that comes from consuming only those foods they have evolved to eat. If you care about humane animal treatment and healthy meat, you will enjoy this conversation.
My interest in transforming America's meat supply keeps getting deeper the more I learn. So today's episode continues our exploration of the pathway to healthy, humane, and ecologically responsible meat production. My deep interest in the topic has roots in my childhood, when my family would visit my cousin's 11,000-acre cattle ranch on the backside of Mount Hamilton in Santa Clara County. On that ranch, called the Isabel for the valley in which it is located, I experienced how humans can produce food while being in proper relationship to nature. The ranch was a wonderland of lakes and ponds amidst the rippling coastal hills covered with oaks and pines. The ranch teemed with wildlife: mountain lions, bobcats, coyotes, deer, wild pigs, and a variety of birds that changed with the seasons. I saw my first golden eagles, great blue herons, quail, dove, wood ducks, and swans on that ranch. There were signs that the first Californians had also found abundance on that land. Deep holes for grinding acorns and seeds could be found in the serpentine rocks in a particularly quiet and protected section of a great meadow that also provided an annual rainbow of colors during the spring wildflower bloom. Although I was young, I was given work alongside the rope-skilled men and women ranchers at the annual May Roundup. While they roped, I worked with the ground crew to inoculate, brand, and dehorn all the calves and castrate the baby bulls to make them steers. The ranching families were polite, hardworking, and as curious about our urban-based family as I was about their rural lives on ranches scattered across the northern part of the state. After the day's hot and dusty work, we shared a meal of grilled steaks, green salad, baked beans, hot garlic bread, and berry pies. It was my favorite event of the year and a place I found sacred for its beauty. All of this is to say I come by my deep interest in regenerative ranching from the impactful relationship to my cousin's ranch. Perhaps it is this respect for ranchers and ranching that opened my heart to today's guest, Carrie Balkcom, whose family operates a cattle ranch in South Florida. I met Carrie in the early 2000s through the slow food movement. Carrie's care for cattle and food led her to become a trained chef, and then among the first advocates and organizers seeking to protect the meaning of the term grass-fed. Through this commitment to transparency, she became the founding executive director of the American Grassfed Association. She and the association are a primary source of so much important information related to exemplary animal husbandry, federal policy and regulations pertaining to meat, as well as regenerative production practices. Carrie is humble, informed, and a fierce advocate in Washington, D.C. for family farmers and ranchers who are both good stewards and proud producers of high-quality, healthy, grass-fed meat. I know you will learn much from Carrie in our conversation today. Carrie Balkcom, great to be with you this morning via Zoom. So glad that you could come talk to me about grass-fed beef, grass-fed meats, actually, grass-fed animals. And how are you doing out there in Denver, Colorado?
Michael, it's a beautiful morning. It's going to get up in the high 80s today, and we're drying out a bit. We've had an incredible amount of moisture this year, so we're always grateful for it. But it's lovely right now. So, and I thank you for the opportunity to spend some time with you.
Yeah, that's for me too, a real joy. So I'm glad you got moisture. We have too. That means a lot more grass, right? So Before we get into what the American Grass-Fed Association does and what grass-fed means, why don't you just tell us your origin story? How, I know you grew up in South Florida on a cattle ranch. How did you come to Colorado to be head of the American Grass-Fed Association?
Well, I was actually born in Colorado. My dad was transferred out here when I was a baby, actually was born here. He went back to the ranch and went back to South Florida where he was from, our family was from. And so we made our way back in the 90s. My husband and I lost our jobs through downsizing with the airline industry. Mm-hmm. And so we got another opportunity to come back out to Denver. And we've been here since 90. And this is home. And we still have the ranch in South Florida. And I get down there frequently. But we like Colorado. We're glad to be here. It's a great place to be from.
Yeah. So just talk a little bit about after you left the airline industry, how did you get into culinary? Because I met you through the food movement. I met you through the slow food movement way back. And so how did you get into that world?
When I got out of college, there were no jobs. So I went to work. The only job that I could really get that would, get me out of mom's house was a job with an airline, which I went willingly and enjoyed it. And it was a different time in the airline industry. So I worked for them until they started deregulating. And I looked around and I thought, well, what have I done all my life? Well, I fed and watered people. So I went back and got my culinary certification as a certified executive chef and started realizing that chefs and people who cook knew less about their food system than most consumers, and started getting involved with the Chefs Collaborative and then also Slow Food, and teaching people about where their food comes from. It became very important to me, having grown up in the rural South, where food being grown was, that was the industry, that was the economy of where I grew up, and realizing how disenfranchised people who were cooking food and serving food and selling food and eating food didn't have any clue. So it was a passion. It started, and that's where you and I met. And I still have a relationship with Slow Food. I think it's an important part to get the word out to consumers about food sourcing. In 2003, because of my background in ranching and food, I was invited to a meeting. There were 13 of us. USDA was going to allow a grass-fed label claim. You could feed your animals 20% grain, give them antibiotics, give them hormones, and confine them and call it grass-fed. So a group of very concerned folks got together and started working on a definition for grass-fed. So we've been around 20 years. We worked for 7 years with the USDA to try and define what grass-fed was, to get away from the 20% grain, and that we worked with USDA. And in 2007, USDA came up with a definition of grass-fed, and it was only what the animal had eaten, not where it had been fed or how it was treated or antibiotics or anything else. So American Grass-Fed had been formed at that initial meeting, but we started our own third-party certified program. And so we've been certifying for grass-fed since 2007. And it's basically, our 4 tenets are 100% forage-based diet, no antibiotics. And that does not mean that if the animal needs to be treated, that it's not. It should be, but then it's taken out of our program. No added hormones and no confinement. So that's the 4 basic tenets that we still believe in and still certify to. Mm-hmm. So it's been a journey, but it's been wonderful, and bringing ranchers and consumers to the table to understand what a pasture-based production system looks like. And we've gotten so far away from that. So we're trying to bring it back a bit.
So are you the first executive director? Are you the founding executive director of American Grass-Fed? Because
that's me. That's me.
We're in those meeting with those 13 people. Can you describe some of who your colleagues were in that process?
Let's see. There was Tom Gamble, who was kept from California. Mm-hmm. There was a dairyman from Indiana, Dale Lassiter. There was bison people. Dr. Patricia Wisnett came in just right after that from Missouri, and she was our first, when we started certifying, she was our first certifying president. Dave Carter, who was with the National Bison Association, is now with Flower Hill. They do an advocacy work for processing for the government. So, and there were a few more people around the table, and I can't remember all of them, but it was a very small group, and we had some researchers and some scientists who came in who gave us the basic idea of what forages could be fed that did not disrupt the rumen, did not make the animal acidosis in the rumen, which is what cereal grains do. And I know that's a little technical, but when you force feed or feed animals cereal grains, it's like giving kids potato chips. It tastes good, it's good, but it's not good for them. It's not forage. And the ruminant animal can turn cellulose, which is grass, into energy, and we can't do that. So it's a great machine to turn grasses and other things into protein, which we can then use for us. So that's kind of thing. Since that time, we have also developed standards for pastured pork, and they're not ruminants. And we also have dairy, pastured dairy, grass-fed dairy standards. So we're moving ahead.
That's great. Yeah, and I think it'd be interesting for people to know what the ruminants are. They're cattle, sheep, goats, and bison, correct? Is there any other ruminants, or are those the four?
Those are our four. Yeah.
Like you said, they're an incredible evolutionary response to the fact that the planet is full of grasslands, and many of those grasslands can't be used for anything but growing grass. And so they became a boon for human existence to be able to eat these animals that